This is festivalPass Stories, a podcast series is told by the people who create and make festivals come to life. You will go behind the stage, kitchen, or studio door to hear the stories of passion and inspiration that started some of the world's most beloved festivals. Hear the startup stories and how an idea went from what if to what's next. Friends, welcome back. It's festivalPass Stories, where we take you behind the stage, the studio, or the kitchen door. And in this case, we're going to take you behind the mind of the screenwriter door, if you will, and the studio door with the co-founder of the WILDsound Festival. He's joining us all the way from Toronto. We had to do this because Canada has wised up and they said, Americans, you cannot come in. They're beating us at our own game, or mimicking us at our own game. I guess that's the highest form of flattery. Please welcome Matthew Toffolo. Matthew, I'm going to start us off with 2020's trickiest question. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm great. Nothing bad about COVID. Of course, the COVID has been a terrible situation, but for myself, it balanced me. It was kind of like a blessing in disguise in a lot of ways. I think for a lot of people as well, it really kind of forced people to stay secluded and kind of figure out what's going on in their noggin when you're crazy busy and you're working 80 hours a week. You don't have that time, and that's what kind of COVID did for a lot of people. So there's been some blessings in disguise in 2020.
Yeah, and you say working 80 hours a week, and you're probably even busier at this time. Most people we talk to were like, look, I've got time to spend with family. We've done the Netflix, we've done the COVID stuff, we've done the hangout stuff, but I seem to be busier than ever. And, you're a family man, so you're not just running your festival. You are also running the family at this point too. So, what's that like?
Like you said, it's all about balance. It's I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. As we're doing this podcast, my 4-year-old is doing a virtual kindergarten class right now. Okay. At her computer. My 1-year-old is just going crazy. So it's, of course I have a wife. I'm not alone, but it's a good balance. There's no time for anything else except for work and taking care of the kids. So there's no time for anything else besides that.
Yeah. So, and I see you're sort of where we all are. I have the green screen going on behind me, but I'm also in the home gym, the home office, the guest bedroom. It is the / economy. Yeah. We're all doing multiple jobs. We're all doing multiple jobs out of one room that is now the multi-function room in the house. And I've even looked around at some real estate. It's just funny to see that one of the biggest selling points in at least suburban real estate now is and you can use that 4th bedroom for a home office, or turn it into 2 home offices. And that's all of a sudden, ooh, wow, that's exciting. You said you live in a heritage house. Is that so there's got to be a lot of history in that house?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of history here, different types of owners. If you believe in the supernatural, some people do, there's probably little rumblings of ghosts hanging around, but they're pleasant. They like us. I think that there's a lot of needing to these type of houses because it's not for everybody, right? So because there's creaks and there's things that need to get fixed a lot quicker and the wear and tear of things, but we love it.
So the WILDsound Festival on the website says you're telling stories through film and conversation. I know you're the co-founder of this. Let's hear the backstory. How did this festival come about in the first place? You're out putting your films out there into other film festivals, and you didn't really seem to love what you were seeing out there or the feedback. And you said this is 2006.
2006.
Yeah, the festivals film festivals especially, have come a long way since then. But back in 2006, you're putting your films out there. You weren't getting the feedback that you wanted. You weren't getting the audience interactions, or the experience wasn't great there in 2006. What was that like being out there? How frustrating was that for you?
Well, like you said, some festivals are great. The networking and meeting other filmmakers, but sometimes some festivals would say that they're going to do something, and then of course they didn't do it. There's it's because it's some of these festivals are one-stop shops. There's one person creating it, but it was more about the audience. I was just sometimes you get audience of 5 people in attendance, and then you do a Q&A, and then the Q&As were people would ask me questions about the film, but I was more curious about the making a better filmmaker.
Yeah.
Like, what did the audience think about my film? Like, honestly. And I realized that they're not going to talk to me personally about what they thought about the film, because there's already emotional connection between the two of us. So I realized, like, I was driving home from a festival in Connecticut. It was like 3:00 in the morning. I was driving from Connecticut to Toronto, back to Toronto. I was like, I should come up with a festival for filmmakers where the audience is the main character. The filmmakers are not in attendance. The filmmakers, they're not in attendance, and the audience gets to talk about what the films, and then we can record it and put it on YouTube, because YouTube in 2006 was just starting out.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. And that's sort of like the idealism. I knew nothing about event coordinating. I knew nothing about marketing. I knew nothing about how to set a festival. I wasn't like a business person back then. And I just said, I need to do this. It's like, I think this is a cool concept. And then we started doing it, I partnered up with the National Film Board of Canada. We started doing it in their screening. And then we brought in like professional film critics, and we brought in professional directors to kind of moderate the Q&A with the audience. And then it took like 18 events. It took about 18 months, because we were doing it once a month, to really kind of nail what the problems were. Because if you give somebody a live mic, think about Twitter, right? Think about Twitter, like people just are able to spew out whatever they want to do. It can be very dangerous. And then I realized that then there's a lot of negativity, there's a lot of judgment. And it took a long time to really kind of nail down how to really finesse and moderate these things for the best thing for the filmmakers. And then just kind of like took off from there. Of course, there's like ebbs and flows and different kind of craziness. And then, in 2000, National Film Board of Canada was shutting down in Toronto, and I lost my partner. And then I just realized my other business partner wasn't really interested in the festival. So I kind of bought her out, and I just started it myself in 2013, which was like really daunting and crazy. But then I just had to do it. My girlfriend at the time said, you got to keep doing this festival. There's something special. She ended up becoming my wife. And because of her, I just kind of like kept on doing it. And now this is what I do for a living.
So you took her advice there, and now you're going to spend the rest of your life taking her advice. I know the feeling of a married man myself. Yeah. But so in a way, you were 14 years, you saw COVID, you saw quarantine happening 14 years ago. In 2006, you were saying, I'm telling you, YouTube is the future. We're going to put our festivals on there. We're all going to go digital, because one day we're not going to be able to go out to films anymore. We're not going to be able to go to the cinema, and we're all going to need to be inside. And people are like, you're crazy. You're crazy. Yeah. And then when Google buys YouTube for like $5 billion, you're like, I'm onto something here. And I love what you said about Twitter. I'm every day, I don't know why I even look at Twitter anymore. I'm 2 seconds away from just dropping my account. I don't even like to go on there and see sports stuff anymore. It's just, you can't even avoid the comments. You used to be able to avoid the comments. Now you just see like a string of negativity of something. And there's this well-known female sports personality, Katie Nolan, and she's got millions of followers. And people like Katie Nolan goes into hiding because she locked her Twitter account, because people were just the vitriol that was coming at her. She's having this debate with another well-known journalist, Jason Whitlock, and he came at her with a bunch of stuff. And she went back at him, and she locked it down, because the world is just like these just bots, and people everywhere are just coming out. And it's like, if you own a restaurant or you have a film or you're doing anything creative, there's just all these awful critics out there who aren't creating anything and just have nothing but time on their hands, and they're just angry about whatever it is in the world. And instead of enjoying a film and saying, well, I didn't like the ending, or this, it's like they have to have these comments about whatever. So how did you start with YouTube? You can't really control the comments.
To go back to you're using sports metaphor, Bill Simmons said something on a podcast in 2010. He said, just don't read your comments on Twitter. Yeah. And it was like, oh yeah, okay. Then I haven't read my comments in Twitter in 10 years, right? Yeah. So and that's a great advice. Just don't read your comments, and then you can just move on. And then you're just shielded from whatever, all the idiot. It's just people judge. There's a lot of like jealousy. We can get into the whole topic about it, but basically YouTube, it's more about the live audience, right? The live audience is just about monitoring and just kind of controlling the voice. And what happens in a situation is the moderator has to serve the story. So meaning that they have to be positive, and if you get a negative comments from an audience member, you have to go to a positive comment, because people, as soon as people see a negative comment, they're like, oh, there's a negative comment. And I'm seeing it on virtual festivals too, online, whereas like someone will type in, they don't like that film, and then other people will start chiming in on the negativity. But the positivity is difficult. People don't want to jump on a positive comment for some reason, probably because negativity is a lot easier to talk about than positivity. But it was just more about the audience, about like controlling the narrative of positivity. And of course, it's about the quality. The quality of films does help a lot, right? If you have a really good film, it's really difficult to be negative about it, but in other people are fine. But you just have to control the conversation, and you got to help serve the filmmaker as much as you possibly can. People have a valid point about a film, for example, or a screenplay. That's very valid. It doesn't, but it's about it's about like the coverage you get in a screenplay. It's about it's about being diplomatic in your response, right? You can have a criticism, but it's about how you say the criticism, right? Like that sucked doesn't mean anything. You can't jump up. You can't become a better filmmaker when someone says, I didn't like that. You got to like back up your criticism, right? So
right, but the problem is some of these negative voices, and of course, I love what Bill Simmons said, and I think what we used to say years ago was don't read the bottom half of the internet, or don't read the internet after the fold, so to speak, when we were really coming out of the newspaper days. But the problem is that some of these negative voices are so influential these days. So how do you handle something like that, where somebody's got 500,000 followers and they know nothing about film, and they just come out with something about that to say that, Matthew should never be behind the camera again, or something like that, and that gets retweeted a couple 100,000 times. Nothing you can do about it, but do you even respond to something like that?
No, of course not. You can't add. I've learned through my mistakes. Trust me, I've learned through my mistakes, because your ego gets the best of you, right? Your ego is telling you, you got to fight back. But like you're talking about, I don't want to get into like people or listening are probably not sports fans, but you talked about Jason Whitlock. Jason Whitlock does that. That's his job. His job is to be a troll. His job is to create controversy. Your president, you have a president who does the same thing, right?
What are you talking about? What?
Yeah.
What?
But the thing
Our
is, though,
president?
Your president tweets something and CNN reacts to it like an ambulance chaser, but he wants that. That's what Jason Whitlock wants people to respond. He wants to get into a Twitter feud with that person.
That's true. I agree with that.
So you know what I'm saying? That's what makes their popularity. They're douchebags. Sorry, I apologize.
That's okay. We get that might be FCC appropriate or Apple Podcast appropriate. We'll find out.
No, I don't mean to like be down on your president, but I'm down on your president. But I'm more down on CNN for reacting to your president. And it's the same analogy for me. It's like they want, when someone is negative, that's what they want. That's what fuels their fire. They want you to react. So if you don't respond, they'll move on to something else tomorrow.
Very true. And I try to, it's impossible to boil Donald Trump down into Twitter characters, but I say this to people all the time when they're like, this guy he's nuts. Why does he do this? He's not presidential, whatever. So it's very simple. Everything that comes out of his mouth or comes out of his Twitter feed is to do two things. It's to infuriate the left and to fire up his base. Exactly. And that is as clear as I can explain to somebody from a different country who speaks the exact same language as I do, or anybody around the world, is that's who this guy, that's who he is. And he's always done things for ratings, and Twitter is his way of getting ratings. It's all he talks about is ratings. So he's never going to stop. And people who thought he was going to change his stripes when he became president and voted for him thinking that he would be this classic president. I mean, he absolutely broke the mold. I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing, but he did.
But he's the analogy of our times, and meaning that like you just can't respond. And like people are learning, like he tried to get into a fight with like LeBron James. We're having a sports analogy. Yeah. But he tried to get a fight with LeBron James, and 4 years ago they would have reacted to him, and then they would get into this spar. That's what Donald Trump wanted. He wanted to get, because that fires up his base. It's like you said, let's go after this guy, this famous person who has a lot of Twitter followers as well. And now they're just stopping. They're not even engaging because he wants you to fight with them. This like
Right.
CNN, he wants CNN to react to his Twitter post, and you just got to stop.
One of the things that social media has done is destroyed discourse, where you used to be able to sit there and have a conversation with somebody and be like, okay, that's it. Now it's like, I must react. It's not that what am I going to react? It's like, you got to react right away in real time. You got to come up with something clever, and you got to go after people. And there are very, very, very few things that Americans are agreeing on right now. And I know that isn't what this conversation is supposed to be about, but it's just, that's the way everything is going these days, right? It's like, it just comes back down to this. It's a heated environment. People have a lot in their minds. And I'll end we'll go to one more sports question, and then we will move back into your wonderful film festival, because there's so much that we need to talk about. Your love of sports. I'm going to stereotype you and say you're a hockey fan because you're from Toronto. Are you watching the Stanley Cup Finals, even though it's two American teams, and it's two? One is an expansion team, Tampa Bay, and the other is they left Minnesota and they're down there in Dallas. It's like, it just doesn't feel, even though it's a totally different year for sports, it just doesn't feel like the Stanley Cup Finals. Are you watching it at all?
I'll tell you what I do is that I work at nighttime when the kids are asleep, and I have two televisions in my office, and I have the first like television, and the second TV is that doesn't have the sound on, and that's where the hockey goes.
Okay,
the hockey's in the background, where it's like I'm like not paying attention, but it's in case there's like a power play or something, like I'll pay attention. Yeah. I'm like maybe I'm more of a baseball fan and a football fan than anything. So probably football is my number one now because it's a better game than baseball, but my baseball is my true love.
Yeah, and I thought that was great that the Toronto Blue Jays were playing in Buffalo, and then the Buffalo Bills play a few games in Toronto every year. What was always amazing to me, when Buffalo would play Miami in Toronto in the Dome in December, and it's like, what are you doing? This is when you should be playing the Florida team in the elements outside in Orchard Park. It was
don't
crazy.
Get me started on that. Yeah, don't get me. I'm like a diehard Bills. I'm from Niagara Falls.
Oh, right.
So, born and raised. So I'm a diehard Bills fan. Diehard.
So. Yeah, we had David Deal, who won 2 Super Bowl rings with the Giants, on the podcast, and we were just talking about how different football was this year. We were even getting into sports gambling, and I don't know if you watched the NFL kickoff, that Thursday night game.
Sure.
It seemed like the Chiefs line up and kicked a field goal at the end of the game, which they didn't. All they needed to do is go in victory formation, take a knee. They kicked a field goal, and we were talking about. I said, "Do you think that's about sports gambling and the fact that the NFL this is sort of mainstream now?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "No, I think they kicked a field goal because they didn't have any preseason games, and they wanted to see if the special teams could kick a proper field goal without getting a penalty." And I was like, well, that's a guy who played professional football versus me. The difference between the man, him with 2 Super Bowl rings, and the fan is exactly that. He's like, no. They were just running out the kicking team to see if they could do it.
You don't think that Andy Reid had knew the point spread? He's like, oh, they're up there. It's a 9-point spread. If I kick this field goal, we'll
yeah. But when they lined up for the kick, Al Michaels even made a comment like, well, someone's going to be happy about that. Because
he does that. He's been known to do that, like those subtle kind of like gambling like tips, right?
Exactly.
Those are people are watching. Come on, like who's kidding who, right?
Well, speaking of gambling tips, or not speaking of gambling tips at all, most festivals, the ones you used to go to in the nascent days of YouTube and so on, obviously not all festivals can be the Toronto Film Festival or Sundance or anything like that. So you saw a lot of pretty bad stuff out there. I'm guessing most of those festivals, those fledgling ones, just didn't make it. They just didn't have they didn't have the content, et cetera. And a lot of times that happens. There's too many. One category is doing really well, so everybody says, well, we need to now start a magazine about fitness. And like, not 50 fitness magazines can survive. 3 or 4 can survive.
Yeah.
Now these best of the best festivals survive. Now, most festivals are annual, but from what I'm seeing, you guys are weekly and monthly. You know, how do you pull that off?
Will and a good team, I guess. And they're always like right now we're having doing this podcast in September. I'm in November and December right now.
Okay.
So everything's been done until so I'm like jumping ahead to like I'm already programming the festival in November and December. It's just like in order to survive you need to have gadgets or like kind of like a different kind of spin to things. We have two spins. One, we don't stop. We keep going. We're like wrestling. We just keep going weekly. And just to jump on the sports, if it's not the sports.
I watched Monday Night Raw for 2 minutes last night just because I was watching another show that led right into it.
Yeah.
And my wife really likes wrestling. She likes at least like the divas. She got really into that. And then she's like, she's like, I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't tell you this before we got married. I kind of like wrestling. And I was like, I kind of like that you like wrestling.
Yeah.
I don't love it. I wasn't one of the kids who grew up like, we would do like Jimmy's Superfly Snuka in the pool or something, but I wasn't a diehard Hulkamaniac or anything like that, but it's just funny one of these things you learn. You're like, wow, do you really like it? She's like, you can leave it on if you want. And then I turned to Monday Night Football and she's like, why are we doing this? She'd rather watch the wrestling. And anyway, you're right. They don't.
No, I was just using that as an analogy. Like wrestling doesn't stop, right?
It's a good analogy. They work year round.
They work year round, and sort of like in that, and two, it's all about the feedback. It's all about the audience engagement. So that's what keeps us going. So we don't stop. Of course, I take breaks here and there. Of course, I'm not a machine, but we just have to like, if you're always ahead, if you're always moving ahead, like you're always a couple months ahead, you can always like take a break and you have a good team. Like we have a festival every month in Los Angeles. And of course I don't go to Los Angeles every month. We have a good team of people and lots of programmers, lots of screenplay readers, and just kind of creating jobs and creating a festival.
So let's talk about the team. How did the team come together? How big is the team now? Or is it a tight group that just works around the clock getting a lot of stuff done?
Well, people come and go, right? Because it's like, especially with like screenplay creators, we have people in the industry, if they're on hiatus, so they want to read scripts and kind of like get their juices flowing. So people come and go that way. The team is like, so we only do a festival once a month in Los Angeles, for example. So they have their full-time jobs, they have their full-time gigs, but then this is their extra kind of like side gig to keep them in the industry per se.
In between projects and so on.
But you always make sure you have a deep bench, so then somebody can't do it. You get like someone comes on top, right? So that's another thing I've learned a lot about, like just in terms of hiring and hiring the right people. There's no really maybe there's some good books about it, but maybe I haven't read it. But I've learned through trial and error, and you just have to like find out what's good for people, right? So the people work hard, and it's really not about talent for me. It's like if you work hard and you're passionate, that's a good combination.
So the staff fluctuates, but on a full-time basis, is there just like a tight team that you can rely on and check in with daily?
Well, Kimberly, who lives in Los Angeles, Villa Rule, she is our mainstay. She's our editor, so she edits all the screenplay videos, all the feedback videos.
So she's always working.
She's a full-time. Yeah, she's a full-time.
There's somebody who doesn't stop. It's her.
Yeah, she's funny because she like lives in Los Angeles. I live in Toronto, but she seems to work like through the night, like she's like a midnight editor.
Yeah.
But as long as it's like we live in the world, as long as the job gets done, and but yeah, she's my full-time staff. She's my mainstay.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. The emails and the correspondence. I finally started doing some Slack. I had never done Slack before, not like it was even around when Bill Simmons was making comments 10 years ago. But it's incredible. You see messages come through at 10 o'clock at night. You're just like, that's just the way it is now. And don't be upset because somebody's reaching out to you. My wife works for a more traditional company, and she's getting messages late at night, and she's still in there in the home office / gym / whatever extra room it is working. And she's like, this is what it is. And the clients need to hear from you now. And you can't wait till 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to respond. Yeah. This stuff just needs to get done now. Back to what I was saying earlier, that people are they're working longer hours. They seem to be busier more than ever. Besides this being a weekly and monthly festival, what separates you guys from other film festivals?
Well, the perfect analogy is that how we were able to transition from and keep going stronger than ever when the COVID happened, because our festival doesn't depend on ticket sales. Okay. Our festival depends on on getting good feedback videos for the filmmakers, getting good coverage notes or good video festival videos for the screenwriters. And with that, people will submit to me. So everybody gets feedback on their script, no matter what if a filmmaker submits to us and we don't accept their film to the festival, they'll still get feedback notes from the viewer, and same with the screenplay as well. So so we're not dependent on ticket sales. So we were able to transition pretty smoothly from March to the virtual kind of world we live in. And now it's a whole different festival. Like, I don't think festivals will ever be the same again. I think that I think that we've transitioned. I don't think movies will ever be the same again. I don't think the viewing audience, even 5 years from now when everything's kind of cool, hopefully, I think that our tendencies are going to change, are shifting. So,
yeah, and that's definitely a question I wanted to ask you is, are people going to go back to theaters even when there's a vaccine and 20% of people say that they won't even take it? At least they wouldn't take it now. Maybe they take it a year from now. So, man, I live in New York City. You're in Toronto. We both know the struggles of a densely populated city and getting people back to restaurants. We're just trying to do what we can, go to any restaurants and sit outside. But it's getting colder in New York. It's getting colder in Toronto. I don't know if they're letting more people go inside restaurants now. Here in New York, it's 25% as of basically September 30th. But when you're paying X dollars a square foot in rent and you were barely getting by, and it was already a tough business model.
Yeah, you're not going to make it.
Yeah. And theaters, the same thing. There are fewer and fewer movie theaters. They're cool, like smaller theaters, but those places are getting killed right now. And we talked to some guys from a group called NIVA, the National Independent Venue Association. And these are small music venues, independent music venues like you'd see on like Bleecker Street in New York, or out in Denver and Austin, Texas, some of those small venues that host some really cool South by Southwest events. And they were grouped in with with hotels and convention centers. And they're like, we are not that. Yeah. So what is, I'm not sure if you've even, if you're involved with independent movie theaters or anything like that, but what are you seeing? How are those people, or the owners of those small theaters or movie theaters in general, coping right now, or what do they see?
Well, I don't want to be negative. We're talking about negative at the beginning. It's like, I just think that this is a shift in society, and it happens every 100 years or so. That businesses will close down, and restaurants will have to shift to the Uber Eats and things like that. And some of them won't survive, and the strong ones will, I guess. And the same with the movie theaters, where the big, we do our festival at the LA Live Regal Cinemas next to the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Okay. That will make it because it has backup. It has a strong base, has a strong corporate base, and they'll just wait it out because they can wait it out. The independent festivals probably won't. The second-rate theaters probably won't. They probably will, as soon as their government subsidy money runs out, they're gonna have a hard time making it. At the same time, some like other businesses are thriving because of COVID, right? So there's ebbs and flows, and unfortunate people are going to be out of jobs, and we'll just have to shift the working environment, right?
Yeah, my friend owns a moving company, and I'm involved in this charity golf outing, and I said, "Can you take a foursome?" He goes, "Yeah, I'll take two." I was like, he's like, "Yeah, I'll probably be moving." He owns the company. He has like 50 or 60 guys working for him.
Yeah.
And he's like, honestly, I'm back in the truck for the first time. Yeah. I'm out of the office and I'm in the truck. He's moving people himself because they are that busy moving people, out of New York City and Toronto.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too negative about it, but it's just the state of affairs. We haven't gone anywhere. We're still in the city, but we own a place. It's a different story. Like, we're not leaving, and we're not going to sell this place right now. And we do believe in the future of this city, but it's scary because we don't have very good leadership here.
Well, New York always bounces back, right?
Yeah.
It always bounces back.
And everybody says that, but this is, 9/11 was a different thing. It brought people together. This has just torn people apart. We were together for a really long, for March, April, and May. And then, of course, other things happened in May to tear the city apart, to tear the country apart, social justice issues or social injustice, depending on how you want to look at it. And that's what I was thinking about is what kind of subject matter you're going to see for screenwriters next year. I would imagine
this year,
even this year, the stuff's already coming out.
We've shown so many already. We've shown so many COVID films. We just had a documentary festival on Saturday. We showed a COVID film about how the Italian doctors are treating COVID back in March, back in February. Someone already made a documentary film about that. And then there's all these like kind of cool documentaries about like Toronto is a desert, or New York City is a desert. There's nobody there, and they're showing like kind of the world, or LA, Los Angeles, we're showing next month. Like the Zoom kind of films that most of them don't work, but some of them do. Kind of, and then the screenplays are all about like kind of like the COVID experience, right? So yeah, I think people are writing, because they have time. I think people are writing screenplays more than ever. I think if you talk to like Film Freeway or Coverfly, those organizations, I think they're both doing well because there's so many people writing screenplays these days.
Just hopping back to, you mentioned that you don't have to sell tickets for your festival, but
it's not imperative to survive.
Okay. Right? So is it grants? Is it sponsorships? And if it's sponsorships, what are you doing these days to reach out to sponsors and showing them that your model is so unique, that what you guys are doing is so special that they need to put their brand behind this?
Well, we were with Yonge and Dundas Square, which is kind of like Times Square. It's kind of like the Toronto version of Times Square. And they're the ones who came to us and convinced us to go online and do the festival virtually. And then they would tie in with their advertisement to like get their restaurants in their community to get people to go to watch our festival and then like eat out with restaurants. And then they stopped doing it with us. And now we're starting it ourselves. And now, right now, for me, we have to build up the view count and build up the viewing, and then we can get sponsors once we show we have value. So that's sort of where I'm at stage one right now.
You're at stage one.
I'm at like building for the virtual festivals, yeah, for the sponsors for the virtual festival.
Okay, so what is you said the content already is a lot of COVID movies or COVID screenplays and so on.
Yeah, there's a lot, yeah.
Yeah. Are you seeing a lot of, or are you anticipating a lot of screenplays coming up from writers about the social justice movement?
We're already seeing that. Yeah, we're going to show one film festival, and about the environments, like all these environment films. We're probably going to have more of a diversity, like all Black filmmakers. We already do all female filmmakers. We've already done like all Latino filmmakers festival, which is more about like just kind of like building up kind of our database and kind of like showing those kind of films. And there's been like, in terms of the screenplays, there's all kinds of diversity kind of screenplays about the time that we're in right now, all kinds of movies about that, especially dance films and experimental films about social injustice. Yeah. But even before 2020, this is something that's been on the boiling plate for decades.
Sure.
You know, the two white men talking, right? Like we don't know much, but we know that there's like, if we put our ear to the ground, we know there's been some unfairness happening in the world for a long time.
No doubt about that. Had an episode with a couple guys who have a festival called Black Voices. And they're like, you know, Pat, we had Black voices before people were saying we need to listen to Black voices. Yeah. And I said, are you getting a lot of people now like Googling the term Black voices and calling you for sponsorship? And they said, yeah, some of it is rather, disingenuous, but we also need money to make this, to get to the next level as we want to do. So we're happy that people want to sponsor us now. We hope they stick around in a year or 2 years, and they stay with us for the long term of this message. But you and I think have done a lot more listening these days. When you said your ear is to the ground and you're hearing these stories, I know I have, and just watching old films and stuff, and you start to see certain things, even old episodes of like Law and Order SUV or Law and Order SVU, I should say, not SUV. That would be Law and Order Sports Utility Vehicle.
That SUV, they're out there. All these white mothers are like
soccer coming up next. What happens at soccer practice? These are the moms in soccer practices. These are their stories in their Toyota SUV. Toyota's not a sponsor of us, so Toyota, that's the last shout out you're going to get. But besides the hard life lessons we've all learned during this pandemic, have you found out any superpowers about yourself? Like, are you suddenly the best chef in the world, or did you pick up a guitar and start playing, or something you always wanted to do, and now you're like, I'm doing it. I made it a habit, and this is me now. This is the other part of me.
No special stories about that, because I'm so busy with my job and the shift in my job, which is, like I said, it's been a blessing in disguise in a lot of ways. But maybe it's more about like I live in a neighborhood that has like a nice park, that has like a nice my daughter calls it a swan playground. They have swans, and like they have like nice little trails and things like that I never took advantage of. So I take my kids out twice a day, hopefully twice a day, once on a wagon, once on a bike ride, and I'm really into the trees. Like I've read the book on trees. I've read like things about the nature and environment, and about really taking advantage about where I am right now, where I live. And I never kind of like, sometimes you aren't even paying attention. So I take my daughter to bike trails in our neighborhood, and now I know the trails like backwards and forwards now, and like just like throwing rocks into a stream, or like listening to the stream, just like this one with nature. Like I've been a city kid my whole life, so basically I never really never really appreciated that until the last 6 months. And I take my kids because I take them outside, and they kind of like organically taught me this.
That is the best response I've heard to that. I've been cooking, but it's like I'm almost like idle hands, gotta stay busy. But it's like if COVID is the story of the year, and social justice is the secondary story of the year, or they run right next to each other, and politics, of course, in there, and big elections happening. But the other thing is the environment and what's happening on the West Coast of this country, and climate change and everything else like that, showing kids what things look like now and what it might look like 15, 20 years from now. Maybe it won't move that fast, but I think that's amazing lessons to teach your kids now and get them out in nature and get them to appreciate it. And as a young man yourself, you're just reconnecting with nature now. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, it's been great. So yeah, it's been a good. I'm not that young, so basically, maybe I look young, but I'm not that young. So my kids.
I was giving you a compliment. Where
I'm just kidding.
I lie about I have 3 older sisters, so I learned to lie about my age early on. So I will. We won't even get to what that actually is right now. So I'll just switch gears one more time and ask you a final question, because you're at stage 1 of this YouTube audience growing, and we need to help you. The festivalPass audience needs to help this festival reach great heights. How can we find out more about WILDsound Festival, and what can we do to support you?
Just go to WILDsoundFestival.com, or if you're Canadian, go to wildsound.ca. There's a virtual link, and every week, every Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are doing a festival, no matter what, 2-hour festival. Like this week it's LGBT on the 26th, and then we have environmental, we have female directors, we have experimental and dance, we have action, we have horror coming up, of course, on Halloween. Comedy, we do different genre, different kind of type every single week, and we just keep going, and we won't stop. So if you tune on to our YouTube channel or go to wildsoundfestival.com on Saturday, you will be able to watch our festival no matter what. And these are amazing, amazing films. These are like some of the best films that you'll see.
I love it. So if you're looking for entertainment, you're looking for diversity, you're looking for topical issues, and to get engaged with what's going on in the world with great content, get off Netflix and go to YouTube Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern, right?
Yep. 8
And the
p.m.
YouTube,
Eastern, yeah.
the YouTube channel is it simply Wild Sound?
It's WILDsound Fest in YouTube channel, or just go to you can link to it on our website, or you can go to my Twitter account, WILDsound Fest, or on Instagram, WILDsound Festival, Facebook, WILDsound Movies. You know the gist. You know how it works, right?
There you go.
Just
And
Google Wild Sound and then you'll find it. So.
And friends, when you do go to Wild Sound on Twitter, be kind. Leave a comment or a like. Don't be negative. We don't need the negativity.
I like people being smart. I like intelligence. And there's a lot of intelligent people on Twitter.
That's true.
There really is. So
that's true.
Anytime I think I'm too smart and I'm like too uppity, I just go to foxnews.com. I read their comment section. I realize there's a lot of idiots out in the world. So that tells you where I stand politically right there.
There we go. On that note, folks, thanks so much for the conversation. Matthew, we will see you on YouTube. We will see you soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time on festivalPass. This is festivalPass Stories, a podcast series is told by the people who create and make festivals come to life. You will go behind the stage, kitchen, or studio door to hear the stories of passion and inspiration that started some of the world's most beloved festivals. Hear the startup stories and how an idea went from what if to what's next.